Times Radio Breakfast.
It's 8:51. A World Cup final, blockbuster concerts, races of mammals and machines. Wembley has hosted a whole range of memorable events since its first, a century ago.
This is where legends become legendary. Where fans gather to witness history. Where hearts beat that little bit faster. Where emotions are supercharged. Sporting drama will happen at other stadiums. Shows will be played on other stages. But nothing matches the magnitude of a moment made here. Wembley Stadium, where it will always matter more.
Well, on the Northwest London venue's 100-year anniversary, let's speak to Peter Kenny-Jones, a football historian. Hello, Peter.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a great pleasure, Peter. Thanks for joining us. We've also got head of Wembley Stadium, Liam Boylan. Hello, Liam.
Good morning.
Peter, let's start with you, shall we? The origins of Wembley Stadium, I think. What was its purpose?
Yeah, well, I think when it first was introduced, it was an optimistic time, 1923, obviously between the wars, and it was just a showpiece of Britain and England being like the leader of sport in Europe and across the world. That's what they were trying to show. And, from the first FA Cup final, as you say, 100 years ago, when 200,000 people were packed in, and it went across into the England national team. And as you said before, there's been a whole manner of other sports and other events that have been held in there. But I think primarily it was used to just showcase how great England and Britain's sport and heritage was.
The first FA Cup final, is that a sort of key moment really in the history of Wembley?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think it's known as the White Horse final, and there's a famous picture, obviously, with a white horse when there's 200,000 people packed into a stadium that probably wasn't fit for health and regulations today. I don't think would allow 200,000 people in there, but there were so many people, they were spilling onto the pitch, and the police have to try and part the sea like Moses. And there's the famous picture of that white horse, and it's pushing everyone off, and it just shows how football mad the country was then and remains today. Bolton go on to beat West Ham, and it's still as magical today. Everyone sings Wembley every season, even if they get through the third round of the FA Cup or the semi-finals, which are held there. Everyone wants to be there, and I think for one venue to hold that, the same rich history for 100 years, it is very impressive.
Yeah. Let's bring in Liam, who's the head of Wembley Stadium. Liam, it's so good to speak to you. In terms of where Wembley is now, and I mean that in terms of its status as a venue, as a sporting stadium, etc., how long do you think it took for Wembley to become this sort of iconic place?
I think once it started to show true multi-purpose use as well as the football, 66 obviously had a huge statement in the world and everybody watching and looking on that side. But then as the stadium started to look and diversify into events, concerts started to come in very late 60s, early 70s. And then you had the other next huge iconic moment in 1985 with Live Aid, and that was just placement on the whole world and everybody's watching. And I think if you ask most people with Live Aid, can they name the stadium in Philadelphia that was twinning on the day, they probably can't. But Wembley just has that stature, and I think carrying on, and then it's carried on that side. If you talk to most people in the world, I'm very lucky that if anybody asks me where I work, I'm very proud and very quick to say Wembley, and you get a reaction every time. It's just the most famous stadium in the world, and we're delighted with that.
This might sound like a ridiculous question, but what do you do as the head of Wembley Stadium?
So Wembley's quite strange in that, as well as this huge stadium, it's an office block because the Football Association are based here. It's a university campus. We have UCFB are based here. We have conference and banqueting. We're used to film locations. We're in quite a few Marvel films. Obviously, it won't say Wembley. It might look like an airport on the Marvel film, but it's used at Wembley. So it's used all the time, constantly on that side. So my job is to deliver that business as usual day to day, and then deliver these huge events. So the teams that work with me are the grounds team with this just amazing pitch, the events team, the crowd safety team. It's just huge. So I have about 100 staff on a day-to-day basis, and then that jumps up to 5,000 on event day. And that's what's take to deliver. Because if you think about Wembley, The upper tier, level 5, is the 11th biggest Premier League ground on its own. It's 39,000. So it's the size of Goodison Park, and that's just the upper tier. So the amount of teams that you need to bring in to put on these events is huge. But it's amazing. It never gets boring.
Absolutely, I can imagine. That is absolutely astonishing. What a great stat. Peter, at this point, I want to ask you, where do you think we are at in the history of Wembley Stadium? So on its 100-year anniversary, does it maintain this status, do you think, going forward from here?
Yeah, but I think, as was just mentioned, I think that diversifying is the fact that makes it so interesting and exciting today. Seeing the women's Euros last year, and that's probably up there with the pinnacle of moments that have happened in the stadium. Having the semi-finals, which is probably something that a lot of football fans don't agree with at the moment, but that's a talking point at least about where it is today. But it's still magical with the FA Cup final. Obviously, there's the League Cup final as well. It's the place that every fan wants to say, "Oh, I've seen my team play there," and that hasn't changed in the past 100 years. Obviously, it had its nomadic period between 2000 and 2007 when the new one was getting built, but still, coming back to that stadium, it still holds its grandeur, which, there's a lot of people maybe who don't live in the south who could be upset about having to travel every season to go down to Wembley and experience it, but it does still hold that magic. And I think, in the changing face of football, that is impressive. And as you say, having the women's FA Cup final, the women's Euros, it just opens up a whole new era of memories and fans who can come. And which is, it's just, I think it will always be special, which is something that should be regarded very highly.
Yeah. Liam, do you maintain that sort of optimism for Wembley?
I do. I'm delighted where we're moving. You can't rest on your history and on your laurels on that side of it, because iconic is great and you'll use that in a lot of language, but you've got to keep pushing ahead of the curve. So you've got to keep looking over the fence at what other venues are doing and make sure that you are known for what you're delivering. And I think it's right that anybody coming to the stadium, we have like non-league football finals here, watching what they're like when they arrive, and it'll be a whole town will come with that non-league football team, and it's special. But then you listen to artists and people like Pink, who is absolutely desperate to play at Wembley, Foo Fighters, all these people, because it just holds that place for people. But you cannot just be this old stadium. It has to maintain what it's doing, and that's what we constantly do. So each year, we're looking for improvement. Each year we're looking, how do we take the step forward? We have a lay and play pitch now, which is grown off site and brought into the stadium, already mature. It's a hybrid pitch with 3% plastic. But what that means is we can turn around we can have a concert on a Saturday night, and the following Saturday we can have a 5-star international football pitch down on the surface. That's what incredible. You've got to do to keep ahead.
It's so impressive. Liam Boylan, head of Wembley Stadium, thank you very much and happy anniversary. And Peter Kenny-Jones, football historian, thank you as well, Peter.